7 minutes, he said. That is all it was. 7 minutes, and now the entire treaty is at risk. Duke Raphael Corsini set the letter down on his desk. His hands were steady. His mind was not. The letter had come that morning from the Council of Treaty Affairs. A rival courtier by the name of Count Ferraro had submitted a formal report to the German court. The report documented a private conversation between the Duke and Crown Princess Evelina Aurelia. 7 minutes. One question about property law. 2 people speaking quietly at a royal reception in the Palazzo Reale in Naples. 7 minutes that were now being used as a weapon. Because in 1810, in the Kingdom of Naples, a crown princess seen speaking privately with an unmarried nobleman was not simply a woman having a conversation. She was a political asset whose reputation could be questioned. And a questioned reputation could bring down a treaty. And a broken treaty could cost the kingdom everything. Raphael had 3 choices in front of him. All 3 were going to hurt. But only one of them could protect her. The question was whether he had the strength to choose it. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes. All characters, names, titles, and events portrayed in this production are entirely fictional and are not intended to represent any real person, living or deceased. Any resemblance to actual persons or real historical events is purely coincidental. The Kingdom of Naples, the noble hierarchy of 1810 Italy, and the broader political landscape of Regency-era Europe are used as a historical backdrop to enrich the storytelling experience. While the story draws on real historical facts about the era, including entailment law, noble peerage structures, and the role of diplomatic marriages in early 19th century Europe, the specific characters and plot are products of creative imagination. The historical interjections and educational notes included in this production are intended to provide general context and are not a substitute for academic historical research. This production contains no racial bias, no harmful content, and is suitable for audiences of all ages. All rights to this script and production are reserved. Duke Raphael Corsini was not a man people questioned lightly. In the noble hierarchy of Naples, his family name carried the weight of 3 centuries. The Corsini dukedom was one of the oldest in the kingdom. His estates stretched across Tuscany and the southern provinces. When he spoke in the king's council, senior ministers wrote down his words. When he entered a reception hall, conversations stopped. But title and land meant something very specific in 1810 that most people today do not fully understand. In this era, a duke was not simply a rich man with a grand house. He was a legal institution. His estates operated under a system called entailment, which meant that everything he owned, the land, the income, the title itself, was bound by law to pass down a specific line of inheritance. If that line was broken, or if his reputation was publicly damaged, the consequences fell not just on him but on every tenant farmer, every household servant, and every dependent family connected to his estates. A duke's good name was not personal pride. It was other people's security. Crown Princess Evelina Aurelia existed inside an even stricter set of rules. She was the direct line of succession to the Neapolitan throne at a time when the entire Italian peninsula was being reshaped by the wars of Napoleon Bonaparte. 3 European powers were quietly competing for influence over the kingdom. Her value to each of them was her hand in marriage, because in 1810, a royal marriage was not a private matter. It was foreign policy. A princess's engagement carried the same legal weight as a signed military alliance. Evelina understood this. She had been raised to understand it. She managed the accounts of 2 royal estates. She negotiated directly with senior stewards on matters of property law. She studied civic philosophy not as an accomplishment, but as preparation for the decisions she would one day be required to make. She was, in every way that the kingdom measured such things, exactly the woman the crown needed her to be. And Count Ferraro, the rival courtier who had submitted the report, had known precisely what he was doing when he chose her as the subject of it. Here is what is important to understand about Count Ferraro. He had no evidence of wrongdoing. None. What he had was a documented observation, a record of time and proximity. 7 minutes. 2 people. 1 room. That was the entire basis of his report to the German court. This is a red flag that audiences should recognize in any era. When someone takes an innocent situation and submits it formally as a concern, not because they believe harm was done, but because they know the rules of the system will do their work for them, that is manipulation. Count Ferraro did not need to lie. He only needed to point. And in 1810, pointing was enough. The German court's representative in Naples had already written twice requesting clarification of the princess's social connections. The secret treaty that promised Evelina to Archduke Leopold of the German provinces contained one specific condition. If the princess was found to have formed any prior attachment with another man, any documented social connection suggesting a personal bond, the German court had the legal right to withdraw from the arrangement entirely. A withdrawal would not simply be an embarrassing cancelled engagement. It would be read, by every watching European power, as a sign that the House of Aurora could not manage its own affairs, and that reading would give those powers the opening they had been waiting for. 7 minutes. 1 report. And suddenly the stability of an entire kingdom was balancing on a question about whether a duke and a princess had spoken for too long at a reception. Raphael read the letter a 3rd time. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city of Naples below him. He had exactly 3 choices, and none of them were good. The first choice was to do nothing. Let the German court's representative continue his inquiries. Hope that 7 minutes of documented conversation was not enough to trigger the treaty condition. Hope that Count Ferraro's report was dismissed as the action of an ambitious man with no real evidence behind him. Raphael considered this for exactly 4 minutes. Then he set it aside. Count Ferraro was not a careless man. He would not have submitted that report without being confident it would land. He had chosen his timing carefully, his language precisely, and his recipient deliberately. Doing nothing was not a neutral position. It was simply a slower way of losing. The second choice was to approach the princess directly. Explain the situation. Give her the full picture so that she could make her own decisions about how to respond. This one hurt more to set aside, because it was the honest path and Raphael was, above most things, an honest man. But here was the problem. If he requested a private meeting with Princess Evelina now, and that meeting was observed, and in the Palazzo Reale, everything was observed, the second instance would make the first one look planned. It would no longer be 2 people who happened to speak at a reception. It would be a pattern. And patterns, in the language of court reporting, told their own story regardless of the truth. He could not approach her. Not directly. Not now. Which left the third choice. He could remove himself from the equation entirely. There was a legitimate military and administrative reason to request a transfer to the northern provinces. The Highland borders had been restless for months. The council had discussed sending a senior ducal representative north to manage the situation on the ground. Raphael had the rank, the experience, and the existing relationships with the northern lords to make the case convincingly. If he submitted the transfer request within the week, he would be 500 miles from Naples before the German court's representative had time to build anything further from Ferraro's report. The documented conversation would become a historical footnote. 2 people who had spoken once, at a public event, and who had subsequently had no further contact. The treaty condition would have nothing to grip. The princess would be protected. The cost was that she would not know why he had gone. Raphael sat with that cost for a long time. He was clear-eyed enough to understand what he actually felt, even if he had never said it aloud and had no intention of saying it now. He had kept his distance from Princess Evelina for 2 years not because he found her unremarkable, but because he found her the opposite of that. She was the most clear-thinking, principled, and genuinely capable person he had encountered in 20 years of navigating the Neapolitan court. The 7 minutes at the reception had not been his first awareness of her. They had simply been the 7 minutes that Ferraro had chosen to write down. Leaving without explanation was not a small thing to ask of himself. But here is where the story asks its real question. And it is a question worth pausing on. There is a version of sacrifice that is really just silence dressed up as nobility. A man decides what is best for a woman, acts on that decision without telling her, and then privately considers himself honorable for doing so. She receives no information. She makes no choice. She simply finds one day that something has changed and is given no reason why. That is not sacrifice. That is control. And it looks the same from the outside. Raphael knew the difference. He had seen enough men in the council chambers of Naples mistake the two. So he did not simply draft the transfer request and seal it. He wrote her a letter first. It went through entirely formal channels, addressed to the Crown Princess in her capacity as a senior estate administrator, referencing the northern property records that fell under his ducal jurisdiction, correct in every technical detail, unquestionable in its propriety. And at the end of it, after the formal language had done its required work, he wrote one sentence that was not formal at all. He wrote, "I do not leave because I wish to. I leave because what I wish is exactly the thing I have no right to." He sealed both letters. He sent them both. Then he called for his household to begin preparing for departure. He did not sleep that night, but he did not regret the letter. A man who tells the truth about what his choices cost him is not the same as a man who pretends the choices are easy. Raphael Corsini was many things. He was not a man who pretended. He left Naples on a grey Thursday morning, before the city had fully woken. His carriage moved through the Via Toledo as the market vendors were just beginning to set up their stalls, cloth, ceramic, bread laid out in the half-dark of early morning. He did not look at any of it. He looked forward, at the road ahead, the way a man looks when he has made a decision and does not wish to be pulled back from it by the ordinary beauty of the world he is leaving. He told himself he was at peace with the choice. He almost believed it. 2 miles from the city boundary, his driver slowed. There was a carriage on the side of the road. It bore no royal crest, no insignia, no markings of any kind that would identify it to a passing stranger. But Raphael knew it immediately. He had spent enough years in the Palazzo Reale to recognize the deep blue color of the door handles, the particular shade that the House of Aurora used on everything it owned, quietly and consistently, as a matter of ancient tradition rather than display. His carriage stopped. He sat still for a moment. Then he stepped out. Now, before we go further, here is something worth understanding about what this moment actually meant in 1810. A royal princess leaving the palace before dawn, in an unmarked carriage, to wait on a public road. This was not a dramatic gesture with no consequences. In the world of Regency-era propriety, a woman of royal rank had almost no mechanism for direct personal expression. She could not write personal letters to unmarried men. She could not arrange private meetings. She could not publicly acknowledge a preference or a feeling without that acknowledgement becoming court news within hours. The road was the only free ground available to her. A public space, technically, unofficial, unannounced. Nothing that could be formally reported, because nothing formally happened. It was the one move the rules of 1810 could not easily reach. She had thought about this carefully. That was clear. Princess Evelina was standing at the door of her carriage. Her senior attendant was seated at the far end, eyes fixed on the road behind them with the practiced discretion of a woman who understood exactly when not to see something. Raphael approached. He stopped at the correct distance, the proper distance, close enough to speak quietly, not so close as to give any passing stranger reason to form an opinion. She looked at him. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The morning was pale and still. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell marked the hour. "You received my letter," he said. It was not a question. "I received your letter," she said. Another silence. "The treaty will proceed?" he asked. "The treaty will proceed," she said. He nodded once. This was the correct outcome. He had known it was the correct outcome when he drafted the transfer request. Knowing it did not make it feel any different standing here on a cold road at dawn with the city of Naples fading behind him. "Will you be well?" he asked. She held his gaze for a moment, and then something moved through her expression, not the composed, managed face of a crowned princess performing her duties, but something underneath that, something honest and unguarded, present for only a second before she brought it back under control. "I will be what I am required to be," she said quietly. He understood that answer completely. He had been living that answer for most of his adult life. He wanted to say something more. There was something more. He could feel the weight of it, the exact shape of it, sitting at the edge of what was permissible to speak. But they were standing on a public road in the Kingdom of Naples in 1810, and the rules of this world did not bend for what two people felt. So instead, he did the only thing that was his to give her. He bowed. Not the short, functional bow of a man acknowledging a social equal. The full, deep bow due to her rank, given slowly, with total sincerity, the way a man bows when he means every degree of it. "Your Royal Highness," he said. She inclined her head. Her voice was steady. "Your Grace." He straightened. He turned. He walked back to his carriage and did not look back. But as the carriage moved forward and the road to the north opened before him, he thought about one thing. She had come to that road before dawn, under no crest, with no announcement. She had found the one ground the rules of 1810 could not take from her, and she had stood on it. She had not asked him to stay. She had not asked him for anything. She had simply refused to let him leave as though it did not matter. And that quiet refusal, that one act of showing up on a cold road at dawn, told him everything that neither of them had been permitted to say. He held that thought carefully, the way a person holds something they have been given and are not certain they are allowed to keep. The towers of Naples disappeared behind the hills. He was still holding it. Back in Naples, Princess Evelina returned to the palace before the city had fully woken. She walked through the corridors of the Palazzo Reale the way she always walked through them, straight-backed, unhurried, composed. The household staff who passed her saw nothing unusual. Her senior attendant, true to form, said nothing about the morning and would continue to say nothing about it for the rest of her life. Evelina attended her morning briefing at the appointed hour. She reviewed the correspondence from the German court's representative and responded to it in the careful, formal language that the situation required. She met with the senior estate steward about the spring land records. She signed 3 letters. She did everything that was required of her, in the correct order, at the correct time. Nobody who watched her that morning would have known that anything had changed. That was the skill that royal life had given her, and it was a skill that cost something every single day. Late in the afternoon, she sat alone at her writing desk with a document in front of her. It was a property record, a set of land accounts from the northern provinces that had been sent to her office for review. Routine paperwork, the kind of document that passed through her desk a dozen times a week. She read through it carefully. She made the necessary administrative notes in the margins, the way she always did, small, precise, useful observations for the steward who would action the record after her. And then, at the bottom of the last page, in the margin beside a section that referenced the northern ducal estates, she wrote 2 words. Small handwriting, careful and neat, the way all her writing was. She looked at the 2 words for a moment. The rules of 1810 were strict and often deeply unfair, particularly to women like Evelina who had no legal voice in decisions that shaped their entire lives. But within those rules, Both she and Raphael found the one thing no system of propriety could legislate away: the choice to be honest, the choice to show up, the choice to act with integrity even when no one was watching and nothing would be recorded. Those choices do not belong to 1810. They belong to every era, including this one. Count Ferraro, for his part, got what he wanted in the short term. The report was submitted. The pressure was applied. He watched the Duke leave Naples and considered it a victory. Whether it remained one is a question for another chapter, because this story is not finished. If you want to know what the two words in that margin said, and what happened when the Northern Road eventually turned south again, then subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell notification so you never miss what comes next. The next chapter is coming, and it will not begin the way you expect. I created this story because we often forget that behind the formal titles and grand palace halls of 1810 Italy, they were real people living inside rules they did not choose and could not easily break. This narrative was inspired by the real political tensions of early 19th century Europe, particularly the period when Napoleon's reorganization of the Italian peninsula put enormous pressure on noble families and royal courts. During this era, your family name was not simply a matter of pride. It was a legal instrument. Lose your reputation, and you did not just lose social standing. You lost the legal framework that held your entire world together. The entailment system referenced in this story was real. In early 19th century noble society, land and title passed through strict legal lines of inheritance. The stakes were never only personal. They were always political, always communal. What fascinated me about both characters was not their helplessness within the system, but their quiet refusal to disappear inside it. Raphael told the truth when silence would have been easier. Evelina showed up when showing up cost her something. Both chose integrity when no one was watching and nothing would be officially recorded. True dignity, in 1810 or in any era, is not found in a title or a bloodline. It is found in what a person chooses to do when the rules of the world give them every reason to do less. This story is a tribute to every quiet sacrifice that history forgot to write down.